I'm going to show you the most effective workflow to leverage cold email to consistently book 20 to 30 sales calls every single month in 2025. We've been developing this framework for over 4 months now, perfecting every single step of the process to make sure that everything runs correctly. And in just January alone, these are the results that we've gotten for our B2B agencies who are targeting local businesses. We booked 98 sales calls and generated $220,000 in pipeline across just 3 clients alone who are leveraging this workflow. And if you don't believe me, I'll let the results speak for themselves, because here's one of the campaigns that's actively running for one of those clients. 262 leads generated from this campaign alone. And the best part about it is that all of the data that we fed to this campaign was sourced directly from the workflow that I'm about to show you. So in this video, I'm gonna break down our 7-step framework for targeting local businesses so you can implement it and start scaling your business with cold email today. Now, before I break down this flow, I want you to picture this workflow as a big whiteboard, similar to the ones that you used back when you were in school. What you're gonna do is you're gonna add all the data, and then you're gonna tell the program who, what, when, and where to physically send these emails. And so starting off with the framework, the first thing that we wanna do is we want to identify the exact types of companies that we're gonna be reaching out to and targeting for our cold email outreach. And so in this case, because we're targeting local businesses, what you wanna do is you wanna find the keywords that these companies you're trying to go after are being searched for by their customers on Google. And the best strategy for this, and what I would recommend, is going over to this free tool called daltonluca.com. And they've actually got a complete list of the 2025 Google My Business profile categories. And so in your case, you wanna figure out who am I targeting? And that could be one keyword category, or it could be multiple. For example, you may only service dentists, or you might service dentists, doctors, anesthesiologists, so on and so forth. And the best part about this workflow is that you could have one or many keywords, and you could have the workflow all built out under one umbrella without having the need to segment your data into different batches. And it all ends up giving you the same result while keeping your data personalized, relevant, and specific to each person or industry or persona that you're reaching out to. And so once you've identified the keywords or the categories that you want to target, then it's just a matter of actually jumping into step 2, which is going and scraping the data. And the tool that I use and what I highly recommend to anybody is clay.com, because it's really an all-in-one tool to create campaigns for cold email from start to finish, so you could source data, enrich it, personalize your emails, push that data into campaigns, and so many more functions that I could spend hours talking about. But one of the things that I love so much about Clay is they've got a functionality called workbooks. And I don't really hear anybody talking about the workbooks, but what's so powerful about these workbooks is that you could create multi-step workflows where you could really source the company data, then you can enrich that company data, clean it up, and then you could find contacts, and then you could push it into other tables, and you could really keep everything organized so that way you're not losing track of who you reached out to previously, and you could also manipulate data and really just do crazy. And so what I'm showing you right here is a workflow of this Google My Business profile scraping framework that we built out together. And where it really starts is from this base table. And so what you wanna do is you wanna identify, of course, those keywords that you're gonna be targeting. So for this specific example, for the campaign that I've already shown you with this client of ours that is targeting gyms, they're going after CrossFit gyms, regular gyms, fitness centers, and I could add on to that list, but those are the 3 that I've focused on here. And then you really just wanna figure out, okay, what locations am I gonna be scraping? And so what we're using to physically scrape Google Maps is a tool called SerperDev. And the reason I love SerperDev is because the data is so freaking accurate. And aside from that, it is way, way cheaper than any other Google Maps scraping platform that you might have purchased or used in the past. And some examples of that might be Outscraper, D7 Lead Finder. But within SerperDev, they've got plenty of different functionalities for what you could do. What we're focusing on is scraping Google Maps. And the key things that we want to focus on is really just the longitude and latitude coordinates. And those are basically the specific locations for these cities and states, and then the keywords that we're going to be targeting. And so here you could see a couple of different columns here where I'm essentially scraping CrossFit gyms, I'm scraping gyms, and I'm scraping fitness centers. The 200, and how I set this up is I came in here and then I plugged in the query, which is CrossFit gym. For the location, I'm pulling off of these coordinates. And then for the page, I'm scraping the first page of Google. Down below, you're gonna go ahead and plug in your API key. And if you pay $50 for SerperDev, you're gonna have enough credits to essentially build out 100 of these lists that I'm showing you here. So it's super, super cheap and effective. But once you plug all that in and you run the rows, if it gives you a 200, that means that the HTTP request was successfully run. And then within that data, if I were to click into it, I could see the 20 places or locations that I scraped from that first page of Google for Yonkers, New York. And then you could click into it and you could see Elevation CrossFit. You could see how many ratings they have, their address, their website, their coordinates, their phone number, hours. And all of this is information that you could then pull into these other tables and use it and incorporate it into your cold email campaigns to really have very targeted and personalized and relevant messaging. So that's really how it goes about step 2 in scraping Google My Business. So we're using SerperDev to do it. And the thing is, having that information originally is great, but there's not really all too much that you can do with that company information. And so what we need to do from here is we need to go ahead and push this data into a separate table. And how I did this, if we go back to the overall workflow, we have the base, which is where we're scraping Google My Business profiles with SerperDev, and then we're pushing everything into a company table. So all of that information and data that I scraped from Google Maps then pushes into this table. And here you could see that it even has columns here, so you could see when I created these records. So if you're building lists in the future, you could always exclude dates that were last week and make sure that you're only pulling new data. But it also pulls in the city, the state, and then all the information that I scraped with SerperDev. So we've got their company name, and then where I go with this workflow is really just cleaning up the data and filling in the gaps on stuff that was missed from the scraper. So here we have the company name. I have a little free normalizing company function that Clay has natively built in. So it removes LLC or Co or Inc. or any weird endings that just don't come off naturally. It pulls the website in, and then where I start getting creative on enriching this data is Google My Business profiles aren't perfect, and a lot of times you're gonna miss key information such as the website URL. And so what I do is I like to use a function called Clayagent, where you could connect it to your ChatGPT account and feed it prompts to then go out and find information that you don't currently have. So in this case, I'm trying to find missing websites that Google Maps didn't pick up on. And it's not gonna be perfect. Some of these companies don't have those websites, but it will fill in the gaps on a lot of them, as you can see right over here, down here. It's merging those websites together, and then we're normalizing those domains. And I added a little deduplication function here to make sure that I don't have duplicates. From there, I'm using another free feature within Clay, which is to check if the URL of the website is valid, that it actually loads, because I don't really want to be reaching out to companies that don't even have an existing website that works, because they're probably not running a great business, in my opinion. Then I'm also just adding in a function here to just make sure that I'm removing things like google.com or manta.com or instagram.com websites that I don't want to pull in because they're not the actual website of the companies that I'm trying to reach out to. And then it's just the other data that I had pulled in from SerperDev. So their search position, how many ratings they have, their address. I have another Clayagent or ChatGPT functionality here, which goes and finds the missing address if I wasn't able to get it from Google Maps. Then we scroll on down, and one thing that's important with local businesses, and another way that I'm using ChatGPT, is to figure out how many locations do these businesses have. And the reason that's important is because a lot of businesses are going to be franchises. And I'd rather not waste my time or my money trying to reach out to, a franchise that has 5,000 locations. I'd rather focus on going after the small mom and pop shops or the locations where maybe they are on their way to becoming a franchise, but they're not that big. Now, one of the main reasons why we developed this workflow was so that we could save ourselves countless hours while also maximizing the results that we're delivering for our clients. And so if you're looking to save hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars trying to build out systems like this for your own business, then feel free to book a call to learn about how BuzzLead can adapt to your company and implement a workflow like this so that we can consistently book you 10 to 20 qualified sales calls every single month with people you actually want to work with. And so with this ChatGPT function, it figures out how many locations they have, and then it gives it a franchise score. And depending on that franchise score, if it's 100, that means that they're a franchise, they have too many locations, and I'm excluding them from the rest of my enrichments. So after that's run, we then run a search to try to find social profiles. So I'm looking for their company LinkedIn URL, and I'm also looking for their Facebook URL. Facebook is key for local businesses. A lot of these businesses really are actively on their Facebook all the time, and you'll also find a lot of emails that the owners are actively managing from their Facebook, so I highly recommend pulling that. Here we're using another ChatGPT function to basically go and browse their Facebook URL and their company URL. And just to give you a sneak peek at what that looks like, as a web researcher, go and visit the company name at this location. You visit their website and try to find their email address. And basically that's going to go ahead and find their general emails. And contrary to popular belief, so many people say not to target or not to cold email businesses' general emails. I think that's absolute bogus. We do it all the time. And the thing is, a lot of local businesses, the business owner is not going to have a professional work email, or they might not have like a domain that their name is tied to in an email. And we reach out to general emails all the time and we get insane results. So I highly recommend doing it. Of course, if you're reaching out to larger businesses or, maybe like e-commerce companies, that's a whole different story. But as we move forward with this workflow, another thing that I've implemented is a little formula to basically not accept general emails that have, things like support or maybe payroll, or maybe it's customer service, things like that. Like those are clearly not emails that I want to go ahead and try to pitch my services to. So with this functionality, it goes and excludes that from being thrown through the rest of the enrichment. Then from here, we just keep on moving down the workflow. And then we get to a point where, all right, we've got our valid companies, the ones that we want to reach out to. Now let's figure out who are the actual decision makers at these businesses. Who are the founders or the owners of these businesses? And the reason we do this is because you're not going to find a lot of that data on platforms like Apollo or ZoomInfo. And so you could actually use Claygent, which integrates ChatGPT within Clay, to go and visit the company website and also search the internet to try to find the founders to see if they're listed anywhere. And it's pretty incredible some of the results that you get. But as you could see here, if they have one founder, it lists it out. Or if they have multiple founders, it actually separates these into multiple sections here. And so now I've gone and I've qualified these companies. I made sure all of their websites are active. I've identified the decision makers. I've found the general emails and the social profiles of these companies. And now it's really just a matter of organizing this data, because you can't really just have all of it plumped together into one mass lead list and then just start firing off emails, because you're going to be having typos and mistakes with how you're addressing people. For example, you don't want to say, hey, there, like you could, but it doesn't sound as great. And so what I do with this data is I actually separate it from here. And I basically want to take all of the general information and push it into its own table. And then I want to take the decision maker information, the contacts, and push that into another table. And so I've set up these write rows functionalities. So for example, right here, write general emails, and I'm pushing that into another one of these tables down below, which I'm about to show you. And then I do the same thing for the founders. So I'm pushing all of these founders into their own specific rows in a separate table, and what that actually looks like. And before I jump to that, one other thing that I do want to mention, the only manual part of this process is if you want to utilize a platform like Apollo.io to get data for super cheap, what you can do with this company information now is you could go over to the use website tab here, and all of these domains, you could copy and paste them, go over to Apollo, and you could plug in your job titles and export a lead list. And that's exactly what I did. And then I went and I just imported that lead list right over here into this import data from, I use Appify to scrape that data for super cheap. And now all of these contacts here are nice and neat. And then I'm pushing them into this final work email table. So basically I want to merge this contact data with the decision makers that I found from this company table, which we can see right over here. And the whole goal is I want to keep all of these contacts segregated into their own company table. And the last piece of this puzzle, for the most part, is really just enriching this information, or waterfall enriching, to make sure that you're finding emails to contact these people and you're validating, verifying these emails, and then we're pushing it into the campaign. So after we write these rows, if we head on over to the general email table, we could see we're pulling all this data in. It's all mapped nice and neat. We could see the company name. And then I added a formula that actually, it's labeled as first name for the sake of importing this data into SmartLead or Instantly or whatever your email sending software is. And it's actually taking the company name and then adding team after. So when I'm calling somebody out in my emails, I could say, hey, first name, but it would read as, hey, Yuba City CrossFit team, hey, Grass Valley CrossFit team. And it sounds natural, and it's much better than the alternative of just saying, hey there, or hi, with no call out of who they are. And so that works out really well. We have a deduplication on the emails to make sure we're not having multiples of them. And then really from there, it's just using Million Verifier, which is an email verification tool. So I'm verifying that these emails are valid. If they're risky, then I'm using BounceBan as my catch-all validation tool to, validate any of those catch-all emails. I have another formula here, which basically merges all of the valid general emails into one section here. And then I use Email Guard, which is a tool that I use for email deliverability, but it's also got some free functionalities where I could basically identify the email service provider that these prospects are using. And I could see, are they on Google? Do they have a custom mail server? Are they on Outlook? And then the last piece, which is incredible, is that you could push this data directly into your SmartLead or Instantly or whatever your email sending software campaign is. And so if I click on this, add leads to campaign, I've already mapped it to this specific campaign. As I told you before, I'm not bullshitting you. This is the exact workflow, the exact data that I'm using for this campaign that has these insane results. And I'm basically mapping out the first name, which is CrossFit team, because we're on the general emails table. And then I map everything else out, and I add a condition at the bottom, which basically says only run this condition if the emails are valid. So if they're undeliverable or bad, or they're just not verified emails, it's not going to push them into SmartLead because we don't want our bounce rates soaring through the roof. And that covers it for the general email table. And now the last piece is really just like taking those decision makers, which you've seen right over here at the end of the table, and we push them into this work email table here. And so we're mapping all the rest of the data here. We have their name, first name, last name, job title. These are all founders, their company name. I have this section called Apollo email, and what that data, the reason why it's empty here is because a lot of these were just contacts that I did not get from Apollo. But all of the data that I imported here, when I took those domains and exported a list from Apollo, these end up pushing into this work email table. And so if I did get a contact from Apollo, it would have their email here. And then it's just cleaning up, formatting all this stuff, deduping the whole sheet. One more step beforehand, I added Million Verifier to verify Apollo emails if we have them. And then I added in a little lookup multiple rows feature here. And why this is important, or why this is a nice feature to have, is let's say you screw something up and you didn't map out the data properly and you're missing certain variables. You could look up from any of these other tables or anything else in Clay. Like I did here, I basically said, look up from the company table. And I basically, if I click on this, it shows, I could pull this up and I could see all of the data that's in that company table. And I could map these over to this to fill in any gaps that are missing. And so then after that, the last step is just waterfall enrichment, where I'm basically cross-checking multiple databases to try to find the email address of these founders that I had gotten from the company table. So I'm basically trying to see if I could find a valid email address for these guys. And if I can't find it on Lead Magic, then it'll check ICPs, then it'll check Find Email, Prospio, Drop Contact, Wizmo. But anyway, the best part about this is that you're not going to get charged the credits unless it actually successfully finds an email. And it drops all of those emails into one nice table. We go ahead and verify these contacts. If they're risky, we go ahead and validate those with catch-all verification using BounceBan. We merge all of the final emails into one final valid emails column. We look up their email service provider to see are they on, custom mail server, Google, Outlook. The reason we do this is to just monitor email deliverability and making sure that we're landing in the inbox, because certain infrastructures are going to deliver better to others. And so that's why we're keeping track of all this. And then the last step, pushing it into the campaign. So you don't have to do anything. And the final step, step number 7, it's really just monitoring all this. So making tweaks, optimizations. You're gonna find certain things that maybe you don't like about my table here. I'm probably gonna make a lot of adjustments to my own table myself. But the thing is, if you wanna add more data in, then all you've gotta do is you come back to this base section here. You could add in some more locations, or you can add more keywords, types over here. And then all you do is come over here and you could click edit. So if I'm trying to scrape gyms, the most recent scrape was page 7. Maybe I want to go and scrape page 8. You could click save and run, and then that's just going to flow through the whole rest of the workflow. And then you just do the same thing. If I want to scrape more fitness centers, I scraped page 7. Now maybe I want to scrape page 8, save and run, and the rest is completely automated. So this campaign workflow is incredibly powerful, and the results don't lie. I mean, we've reached out to maybe 8,000 contacts. We have some more in the queue, 262 leads from one campaign. So hopefully that helps. I will go ahead and share the actual template for this Clay workflow. Other than that, let me know if you have any questions. This workflow is by far one of the most effective approaches for cold email if you're targeting local businesses. But if you're not aware or don't understand any of the upcoming spam changes that are happening in 2025, then you might be doomed anyways. So if that's you, then make sure to stick around for this next video so that you can make sure to stay ahead of Google and Microsoft and maintain great deliverability so you could scale your business in 2025 with cold email.